this here in the States. It's multiple publications that's reporting it in the United States. And look,
becoming working worlds with the monarchy.
No. I don't think it's ever going to be possible.
It finally happened. After years of distance, defiance, and carefully managed separation, Prince Harry's return to the United Kingdom didn't look like a homecoming. It looked like retreat. No waving crowds, no triumphant arrival, just a man stepping off a plane with his shoulders hunched, eyes hollow, moving quickly toward a waiting car as if the ground itself had become unsafe. This wasn't about nostalgia. It was about containment. And that image alone says more than any press release ever could. Because when a man who once swore he would never return under royal terms suddenly comes back quietly, without warning, without spectacle, something has already broken. This wasn't strength. This was damage control. This was a man realizing that the story he helped build was now collapsing faster than he could outrun it. For years, Harry stood firm. He defended. He denied. He attacked the press. He framed every controversy as persecution. But this moment felt different. This moment felt like gravity finally won. Like the weight of something unspeakable had become too heavy to carry alone. People close to the situation say his return wasn't planned as a reconciliation. It was planned as shelter. Because when narratives start leaking into legal rooms instead of tabloids, the rules change instantly.
Complete, and bar a complete about-face by the Sussexes, it is final. For Harry then, perhaps, a sense of
because once the truth, the alleged truth, as insiders now carefully say, about Meghan Markle's pregnancies began to circulate in closed legal circles, Harry didn't move forward. He moved inward, back toward the monarchy, back toward the one institution with the legal gravity to absorb a shock of this magnitude. And that's where this story truly begins. According to a legal consultant who once worked closely with the Sussex operation, there was a night when Harry finally broke. No cameras, no statements, no controlled language, just a private room, a long silence, and words spilling out because he could no longer carry them alone. The consultant claims Harry admitted something devastating. That moment is everything. Not a press conference, not a lawsuit, a breakdown. Because insiders say Harry didn't confess out of strategy. He confessed out of exhaustion, the kind that comes from years of holding a story together with sheer will, knowing deep down that if one thread was pulled, everything would unravel. And apparently, in that private space, without handlers or scripts, Harry finally said the thing he had never allowed himself to say out loud.
His responses in a recent interview stunned fans. What did he say?
He said Meghan never carried their children. He said the story the world was told wasn't the truth. It was a version, one Meghan insisted on and one he agreed to support because he believed it would protect their family. At the time, Harry thought secrecy was safety. He thought silence was strength. But now, that same silence had become the heaviest thing he had ever carried. That silence, according to people who claim to know, didn't just weigh on Harry emotionally. It hollowed him out. Friends say he stopped arguing because he no longer believed his own defenses. He wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't fighting back. He wasn't issuing statements. He was empty because guilt doesn't shout. It drains. I just wanted to protect my family, he reportedly said, and that one sentence explains everything. Not malice, not conspiracy, fear. Fear of exposure, fear of consequences, fear that the truth, once released, couldn't be contained again. But here's the part no one talks about. Lies don't stay small. They grow. They require reinforcement. They require paperwork, procedures, silence from others. And once that machine starts moving, it doesn't care about intentions anymore. And then there's DL, a name withheld, a presence erased, a woman who says she wasn't just involved, but central. DL claims she is not only the surrogate, but the biological mother of both children. And she says she has proof, not rumors, not feelings, documents, DNA, medical records, emails, agreements that were never supposed to see daylight. For years, she stayed silent, bound by NDAs, promised protection, promised compensation, promised distance. According to her, every promise failed. She wasn't checked on, she wasn't acknowledged, she was erased. And erasure, she says, is what finally broke her silence. Because when someone carries life physically, emotionally, legally, and is then written out as if they never existed, something changes. Dill says she didn't speak because she trusted the system. When that trust shattered, she decided she wouldn't disappear twice. Her story rewinds us back to late 2018. She claims she was approached through an intermediary tied to an elite fertility clinic used by high-profile clients who demand absolute secrecy. Everything was framed as controlled, confidential, generous. She agreed. She signed. She followed every rule, every appointment, every instruction. She carried the pregnancy. And when the baby was delivered, she says the door closed. No goodbye, no follow-up, no acknowledgement, just silence. Replacement silence. Because soon after, a new story rolled out. A public one. Smiles. Announcements, carefully timed appearances, a narrative that didn't include her at all. When the palace announced Meghan was in labor, the world leaned in. Then suddenly, Archie had already been born. People shrugged it off. Privacy, modern choices. But DL claims the timing wasn't rushed. It was staged. She says Archie had already been born weeks earlier, quietly outside royal observation, without photographers, without hospital steps. And if that's true within this account, then what the world saw wasn't an introduction. It was a performance. She claims timelines were adjusted deliberately, announcements delayed, paperwork aligned to fit a story already chosen. And once you look back through that lens, things start to feel unsettled. Meghan appearing days later, composed, rested, in heels. At the time, it was praised as strength. DL says it was something else entirely. And that's when emotion turns procedural. Because pregnancies aren't just visual, they're documented. According to DL, her name appears nowhere on records the public would ever see. She says she was told clearly, no trace of you can remain, not even a signature. And that's not secrecy, that's reconstruction. What makes this even more unsettling in the narrative is what happened months later. Archie's birth certificate was quietly changed. Meghan's name was removed. The explanation given was a clerical adjustment. At the time, most people accepted that. Placed next to Dell's account, it takes on a different meaning. Not a correction, a containment. And containment is where the monarchy enters, not as villain, but as system. Because succession isn't emotional, it's legal. And when records don't align with reality, institutions don't panic, they prepare. That's when Harry got on the plane. No announcement, no briefing, no justification, just silence. He arrived not to family embraces, but to lawyers, binders, timelines, questions. According to insiders, he didn't argue, he didn't defend, he listened. He admitted what he didn't know, what he never saw, what he trusted others to handle. And that frightened him more than anything, because intent doesn't matter when records exist. Law doesn't care why a story was told, only whether it was accurate. Meanwhile, DL didn't leak. She assembled. Legal, medical, media, quietly verifying everything. Not for revenge, she claims, but acknowledgement, because being erased hurt more than secrecy ever did. The palace, according to this narrative, learned of her preparations before the public. That accelerated everything. Because once documentation exists outside control, strategy becomes urgency. Harry asked one question repeatedly. What happens to the children? Not titles, not headlines, stability. And the answer he got wasn't comforting. Children don't suffer from truth. They suffer from chaos. Surrogacy wasn't the problem. Representation was. And once evidence enters the public sphere, silence stops working. As speculation grew, old questions resurfaced. Timelines, announcements, gaps once dismissed now felt unfinished. And unfinished stories don't stay buried. Harry watched it all from the inside, not as a spokesman, but as a man confronting choices made in fear. He believed loyalty meant silence. Instead, silence fractured him. One advisor reportedly said, "There's only the least damaging truth." And that sentence lingered. Mediation was discussed, controlled disclosure, legal acknowledgement without spectacle. But trust was gone. Dill didn't trust silence. Harry didn't trust silence. And the institution didn't trust it either. Harry's return wasn't about choosing sides, it was about choosing gravity. Standing near the structure that could absorb impact. He didn't flee because he was defeated. He fled because the illusion was. And once illusions crack, they don't shatter loudly. They dissolve, leaving only reality behind. And inside that reality, nothing feels clean anymore. Every option carries damage. Every silence carries consequence. Harry, according to those close to the situation, began to understand something terrifying. There was no version of this story where he remained untouched. For years, he believed staying quiet was an act of love. Now he was realizing that silence can also be a weapon, even when you never intended to use it that way. People around him say his demeanor completely once he returned. No more righteous anger. No more speeches about the press. Just long pauses, long stares, long moments where he seemed to be replaying the past again and again, searching for the exact point where protection quietly turned into participation. Because agreeing to a version of events doesn't feel dangerous. dangerous at first. It feels temporary, manageable, but time has a way of exposing everything you hoped would stay buried. What haunted Harry most, insiders claim, wasn't the exposure itself. It was the possibility that his children would grow up surrounded by fragments of a story they didn't choose, watching adults argue over truth while they inherited confusion. He reportedly asked whether children eventually resent lies told for their own good. No one gave him a straight answer, because there isn't one. And then there's Meghan, still silent in this narrative, still unmoving publicly. That silence is being read in 100 different ways. Strength to some, strategy to others. But silence, once the ground starts shaking, doesn't calm anything. It amplifies speculation. Every hour without response allows the vacuum to fill itself. Dill, meanwhile, remains steady. That's what unnerves people most. She isn't rushing. She isn't teasing. She isn't chasing attention. She's preparing. And preparation signals confidence. The kind that comes from knowing your version of events doesn't rely on performance, but on records. And records don't panic. Those watching this unfold say the palace isn't scrambling, but it is calculating. Not how to deny, but how to survive the truth with minimal fracture. Institutions don't feel guilt. They feel risk. And this risk isn't emotional. It's structural. Once credibility cracks, everything above it trembles. Harry now sits between worlds, no longer fully outside, not fully inside either. A man who left to escape control now realizing that total freedom doesn't exist when your past is documented. He isn't fighting anymore. He's listening. And listening in situations like this is often the first step towards surrendering illusions. What comes next isn't about a scandal exploding overnight. It's slower than that. Heavier, a reckoning that moves through lawyers, courts, archives, and conversations that never reach microphones. Public reactions will come later. Right now, decisions are being weighed that will echo for decades. Because once the truth becomes less damaging than the lie's time is over. Harry didn't return because he wanted forgiveness. He returned because he needed structure. Because chaos doesn't protect children. Because illusions don't raise families. And because at some point, even love has to face reality. The world may be waiting for a dramatic reveal, a single explosive moment. But this story isn't loud. It's slow. It's procedural. It's painful. And it's already moving, whether anyone speaks or not. And that's the most unsettling part of all. Unsettling part of all. Unsettling part of all. Unsettling.